Hey there, it's Brendan Rogers, and you're listening to the Quick Flash Podcast. Here, we talk about everything photography, videography, and living a fulfilling life. We talk with other photographers, videographers, and entrepreneurs where we can all learn how to grow personally and on a business level. Thank you so much for swinging by our podcast, and let's start the show. So, Luis, you're an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so
on your own and doing your own thing?
Yeah, so I guess, it's a little bit of a long story. I'll try my best not to talk too much, get too into the weeds. But yeah, I've been an entrepreneur now for a little over a decade. Started my first business back when I was like 21 at the time.
Okay.
And our business has had like several evolutions. You'll always when you talk to a lot of business people or entrepreneurs, they'll always say your first business is usually never the one that's going to work out. Right. And so at the time, back when I was in college, I actually was interning for a local magazine.
Okay.
If you're from the area, some people might, if you're from the RGV and you're listening, back in the day, it was there was this pretty cool hipster magazine called Pulp and Fiction.
Oh, okay.
And it was kind of like a lifestyle magazine, right? But it was trying to be more hip and trying to do some, document cool stuff that was going on. And at the time I was studying to be a graphic designer. And so nice. I didn't really know anything about design at that point because I was still a sophomore, I think. And, if you don't really start taking real design classes until you're later in that career path. But these dudes, I interviewed with them. I really needed a job. And they asked me can you do this? I think at the time they asked me if I could design a rocket. And I was like, yeah, I can do it. And I frankly had no idea, I did not know how to do it. But, just what, a lot of people do is I went home, went to YouTube and I figured it out, right? I figured out how to use the software and Illustrator at that time, right? And got it done. And so, I worked there for a few months and then I never got a 3-month internship turned into a 6 and then a 12-month internship. And so I never really got paid. And then so it got to a point where one of my friends and I were cause I learned the business in and out. And I was it got to a point where one of my childhood friends and I were dude, we could do this. You know what I mean? We could just create our own magazine and we could make a ton of money. And we were, he was I think 23 or 24 at that time. I was 21. And we were so illusioned with the idea that yeah, we were going to start our own magazine. We're going to sell ads. We're going to make a ton of money. We're going to be rich, And so we did start it and we actually did get to publish 2 issues.
Oh, nice.
But we did not make a lot of money. And so that's usually how it goes, right? And so, but the nice thing about it was that that it actually was we always kind of saw it as a stepping stone towards ultimately doing what I really wanted to do, which was doing more brand design and doing advertisements and different things like that. So it did actually get us exposure to a few lawyers, restaurants, a few schools. Wow. And that opened up a few different projects for us where we actually started doing more branding, more advertising work, web development, stationery design, all that stuff. And so that throughout the years, we kept doing that. And then once it came to graduating, I always knew I didn't want to get a real job just because both my parents are entrepreneurs. And then I grew up with my dad always saying why would you want to work for somebody when you can always just work for yourself?
That's awesome.
And at the time you're a kid, you kind of just ignore it. You kind of yeah, sure, dad, whatever. Right. But I guess, it kind of just stuck with me. And I knew that even at school, I hated the regimen of it. I guess that's the going in at a certain time and getting out. And I knew that if I would have gotten a job, I'd be depressed, right? I just knew that about myself. And so as soon as I graduated out of college, just went into just kind of continuing that business. And so my friend and I, we just kind of kept going at it. We weren't making a lot of money at that time. We were hardly making any money, but we actually did start working with a few different people that got us connections. And we started working with bigger, more well-known businesses around the area. We started working with Idea Public Schools. We started working with Komori, a few other of the big restaurants and stuff like that in the local area. But then 6 months in, we actually ended up partnering. So that was like the second iteration of the business, right? And then 6 months in, I actually partnered with two other friends of mine who were software engineers. And so that was like our third iteration of the business, which was from just being more of a design agency to actually becoming more like of a full service agency. And so since they were software engineers, we actually started doing a lot more web development. Started doing a lot more like web applications, mobile applications, different things like that.
Wow.
And that's when like, you know, it was really hard at first. Like it was very like tech startup lifestyle. Like we all worked from out of a house. We all slept under our desks. Like we worked 7 days a week. We worked like 12, 16-hour days. Like it was very startup culture. Like, hey man, like if you sleep, you die. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like no sleep's for the weak type of thing, you know, and it was very like hardcore. It felt like you're like in the army almost, because these guys were actually very intense. But it was actually a very rough time because, you know, like I said, we weren't really making that much money. We would, you know, even certain to the point where like, you know, it's not fun sleeping on your desk. Like I would actually get like colchas, you know what I mean? Like in sábanas and like bed sheets, and I would roll them up and put it under like this little shelf, and then I would just get up and go to the computer, and I would just then bring those out, and I would sleep on the floor, you know? And then sometimes we would just have sandwiches for food because that's all like what we had at that time, you know?
Right.
But then little by little, we actually started, you know, doing a little bit better. We actually ended up winning like an award, like a grant in the city of Mission. And so that opened up more opportunities. We started hiring more people, and we started getting contracted from like businesses from outside of the area. Because at the time, you know, you're trying to sell like a website or like a web application to somebody in the Valley. And it's like, at that time, this was back 20, you know, actually, no, I'm sorry, not 2010, like 2014, 2015. Okay. And like nobody really appreciated it, right? And because we were doing like some really cutting edge stuff at the time. And so, you know, obviously here, like one that appreciated, or like we couldn't really charge what it was worth because they just didn't really understand the value of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we actually started selling outside of the area, and that's where things got really interesting because we started working with like tech companies from all around the world, actually. And so that's when things started getting like really fun. We actually got to work with like 1 or 2 Fortune 500 companies. We got to do some work for MIT.
Wow.
And then we started, and then once we did that, we came back, and it was already like 2016, 2017. And that's where like the Valley was already like at a place where like they were ready, you know what I mean? So like we actually started doing a lot more work for City of Westaco, City of Edinburgh. We did like Matt's Cash and Carry. Like we did like a few different like websites for some of these other like companies, and you know, so that was always nice. But at that time, one of the, you know, part of being a business owner, you wear multiple hats, right? So it's like I would do a little bit of everything. And I kind of started getting really into marketing and advertising at that time. And then I ended up, at the same time, I was doing cold calling. I was doing sales, right? And so I ended up calling a local med spa and just tried to pitch them. And thankfully, they didn't hung up on me. So they actually heard me out. I went to go sell them. I told them like, hey, I can actually help you, you know, generate new patients. And so at the time, they had this machine called Cool Sculpting, which is like it's like a non-invasive fat reduction machine. It's it's like super popular. Like it's endorsed by like all the celebrities and stuff like that. But it's like a 6-figure machine, and like these doctors, they lease it and they have to pay that lease every single month, right? And so these guys would get sold the idea that like if they buy this machine, it'll sell itself. But just like anything, that's never the case. Nothing sells itself. Like you have to sell it, you have to market it. And so they were just, you know, having a really hard time getting patients for it. And so they asked us if we could help them. And so they would get about 7 inquiries on a weekly basis. We actually implemented an ad campaign for them. And in 7 days, we got them 126 prospects. Wow. So it was like ridiculous. And so they did about 25 grand off of that, which was pretty awesome. What I did then is I got those results and I published them online. And then our phone started ringing with like other med spas asking us like, hey, can you do the same thing for me? Because it was a really big like need at the time. And so we fast forward 6 months later, we started working with like a few different, we had maybe about like 30 clients. We were all doing the same thing. But one of the things that really one of the things that started happening was that you kind of realized that like business owners, at least medical professionals as business owners, don't really understand like the nuances of like having a great acquisition campaign or an acquisition process. So, it's not just about generating leads. It's about, okay, what happens after the lead is generated? So for example, like, good follow-up, making sure that that lead is scheduled. And then once that lead comes in, like having a good sales process, right? And so a lot of our clients would actually leave because they weren't getting the result that they wanted, and they would blame it on the leads. But in reality, it's because they just didn't have good processes, right? And so at that time, I said, you know what, like if we're going to really help these people, we really need to like dive in deep and really understand the nuances of the challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis, and like figure out how best we can help them.
Right.
And so my wife and I branched off from that business, and my wife and I started Everable, which is one of the businesses that we have today. And so we solely focus on working with that industry and really helping them with every single step of the acquisition process. So from like marketing, advertising, from scheduling the leads, and then even from consulting from a sales standpoint, so they can actually get the result that they want. So it's like super in depth. We did that. We grew that. We tried, we flew out to go visit our clients so that we could really understand them. We did a bunch of stuff in regards to that. Cause like for me, like I'm really passionate about business. Like I really like helping people grow their business. Like that's what I really enjoy doing. And so that was really fun. And so, we had that going for us for quite a while, and that business is still operational. My wife actually manages that business right now. But in 2020, when everything shut down, we actually decided that it was a good play for us to branch off and diversify, and also work with other industries. Because at that time, the entire med spa industry just like collapsed for the most part. Like it shut down.
Nobody's going in.
And so what happened, we were still able to like keep the majority of our clients. Thankfully, we didn't need to fire any of our team members. We grew that business from my wife and I to being like about 15 people. We didn't need to fire anybody, which we were super thankful for. But then we had a client refer to us an orthodontist. And we ended up implementing a campaign for this guy, and he actually got amazing results, dude. Like I think he was getting a 37 times return on what we call return on ad spend. So basically what it means is that like every time he would put in $1, he would get $37 back.
That's crazy.
It's ridiculous, dude. Like I've never seen results like that ever. Like in most businesses, if you get a 3 to 5x return, like that's really good. If you get a 10x return, you're like over the moon.
That's
you know what I mean?
Cordone,
yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. 10x. Right. And so for this guy to be getting like a 37 times, it was like ridiculous. And so we saw a really great opportunity there. And so we actually started another business called Engage, and that business solely focuses on working with these dentists and orthos. So that's been the journey, dude. I mean, it's been crazy, but we've actually been able to do quite well. That second business, we also have like, and I think in total we have like 30 employees that do multiple things. Grew those to, Everable is like a 6-figure business. Engage is like a 7-figure business. So like it's pretty nice from like being able to like not have anything to ultimately like being able to like, obviously be a little bit more fortunate and blessed. Like it's been pretty.
No kidding. Nice. 7-figure revenue, like gross. That's what you're grossing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
For market. And so you pretty much, you go to a bit like an orthodontist office, and you I mean, from very beginning to the end, you just walk, like you show them like, okay, when the client comes into the door, this is what you're going to tell them and stuff, or like what?
So essentially, what we focus on, what I tell our clients is like, it's essentially, we are essentially acquisition specialists, right? And so we're not a traditional marketing company in the sense that like, oh yeah, like we're going to do social media posts and we're going to get you all these likes and followers and stuff like that. To me, like that's not relevant. Like to a business owner, what a business owner cares about is how much money can you make me, right? And I need results today, not tomorrow. And in the past, I don't know if you're familiar with like some of the marketing strategies in the past, but it was like SEO, blogging, content marketing, social media marketing. And it was very like, you have to do social media marketing, you have to do content marketing, but you have to give it like 3-6 months before you can see any results. And I mean, yes, I'm not, content marketing is definitely a great strategy. You should do it, but it's a long-term strategy. And so for our clients, like they want results yesterday, you know what I mean? Like, and so what I really loved about the process that we implement for our clients is that it's a proactive approach to helping people generate revenue, get results today. Not like, sometimes tomorrow, but like, more often than not, it's like the same day. Like you turn it on and you get results. And so what we do is that we go in and we'll actually implement the entire acquisition process from like full spectrum. So yes, we do social media advertising. We're, mainly the typical and the easiest is like Facebook, Instagram ads, right? Do some good creative, get some good copywriting going, get people to a landing page that we specifically design for our clients, get them to opt in. We implement a software that actually is what's referred to as a CRM. And on the CRM, like you keep track of all the leads, like the pipeline, like where they're at within the acquisition process, right? And then we actually have a piece of software that's powered by like artificial intelligence. And so what it does is that before we used to tell the clients that like they would have to schedule the leads themselves, but people are horrible with that. They don't have time, they don't have the time for it. And so what we did is that we actually took that responsibility from them and we kind of put it upon ourselves. And so we have this AI that will text the leads and will work towards getting them scheduled, right? And then, so then now all the client needs to do is get the person to say yes to treatment. You know what I mean? And so even at that, like we don't really, like we know best practices when it comes to sales and different things like that. But I mean, like doctors want to hear it from somebody like them, right? So what we did is that we actually got some of our more like our better clients and we asked them like, hey, could you come on as a coach? And so we actually have some of our clients that will coach our other clients, right? And then we actually partner with a few other people. Like we have this one lady who's like a sales coach and she has a lot of experience in that industry. And so she'll do like one-on-one calls with them too to train them. And so because at the end of the day, it's all about like, getting them results, right? And so if we can get them results, then they're going to stay with us for a very long time, right? And so that's ultimately
you're going to have repeat customers. Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you can't, obviously you're good at it. if you're able to generate that much, I mean, it's just, you can't be bad and do that, right?
I mean, well, we've had some crazy results. Like we actually just finished a campaign for one of our clients about 2 weeks ago. And dude, we generated $99,000 in 2.5 days. It was ridiculous. Like, and then we just finished another client who's actually based in Houston, and he did 73 grand in 7 days. A little bit more, but he, and so what we do for these guys is that we kind of have like a model. We refer to it as like a plug and play thing.
Oh man!
And we just tell them like, look, man, just install this model into your business, and you'll get crazy results. And so, that's what we've been doing recently, and that's been pretty fun.
You do like you ever see The Wolf of Wall Street, where he's training everybody and he just gives them like this pamphlet. All right, this is what you're doing.
Here's the playbook.
Yeah.
And that's what we tell our clients too a lot of the times, because it's like, hey man, like, look, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like we know what works. We have a ton of data. Just follow the play, man. Like follow the play and it'll work for you. But sometimes it's hard. The most difficult thing that we come across is getting these guys to say yes to doing things our way.
Well, that comes with the mentality of med school and dentistry and like that. Sure. Yeah, because they're always used to being in charge.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So how do you get around that? Because I know I work with doctors, right, in the hospital. So it's like, how do you get around that? Because if you're too aggressive, sometimes that could be a bad thing, right? Like,
well, it really just depends on the person, right? Like I think there's obviously different types of personalities, and the way you communicate with one will work versus someone else, But like I know for most of the time, the doctors that are that are more like prideful and want to do things their way, a lot of the times you have to like meet them at their level. And I tell these to our salespeople all the time and to our, what we call our client success manager, our account managers. Cause I'm like, you can beep this out, but I'm like, if they're being an you have to be an back almost, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like you kind of have to meet them at their level so you can like shut them up, you know what I mean? Like, or, you know, or show them like, hey dude, like, no disrespect, but like I'm at the end of the day, it's business. Right. And so when it comes to business, and then if like, look, man, you hired us for a reason. And if you do want to be successful, then here's what you need to do. Like, I'm not here to waste your time. You know, like, I know you don't want to waste your time. Like, and a lot of the times we've had situations where we've had to let people go. Like, we let clients go. Like, look, man, if this is not how you want to do things, like, peace. You know what I mean? Like, because there's, you're just wasting your time, wasting my time, and it's money, right? And so it's just like not going to make, like, we're just not a good fit, right? Wow. And I think even just for like, I'm also, like I said, I studied graphic design. And so I'm really also into like aesthetic things and photography and videography and all that good stuff too. And so all these concepts apply to any type of business. Like at the end of the day, like people want a specific result. And so when it comes to, this is one of the things that I had to learn too, when we were doing more graphic design work, because it's easier to sell marketing because it's like, hey, it's like money, it's patience, it's more tangible. Right. Whereas like when you're selling design and videography or photography, it's like, it's a little bit harder to quantify. Right. So it's like people sometimes will not see a direct result. I'm like, man, you did an awesome video. This video is going to generate paid revenue, right? And a lot of the times as creatives, we're not really taught to speak to people that way. It's more of just like about how we want things to look pretty. You know what I mean? But but if the way that you can really get people to start respect you more, see you as an actual like business person, and like also from like even just as a marketing, I guess, I don't know if the right word is like expert, but at the end of the day, it's like really relaying the idea that, hey, I'm going to do this creative work for you, but it's not just going to look pretty. It's also going to help you grow your business. Right. And so being able to actually speak to them in that way that like, yeah, like this video that I'm going to do for you, or this photo, like it's going to help represent your business in such a way that it's going to look more professional. It's going to, and then it's also going to attract the people that you want in your business, right? Which is a huge selling point. Because like people say all the time, like, oh, how do I want more clients? But then they also say like, I want to get the right people through the door, right? Like I don't want these people that don't have any money or whatever. Exactly, right. And we're actually big on creative, like specifically video. We tell our clients that like they need to be shooting video because it is, we bring it back down to like basic business principles, right? That at the end of the day, we do business with people we know, we like, and we trust, right? And so at the end of the day, all you're trying to do with a digital medium is exactly the same thing, but it's digital, right? And so what's the fastest way to get somebody to know you, like you, and trust you? Well, video. Right? Like if you see somebody's face, you're going to know them. You're going to start seeing them how they are. So you're either going to like them or dislike them, and if they dislike you, it's actually a good thing. Yeah. Right. So you're repelling and you're attracting. I'm sorry, repelling and attracting. my hands are backwards. And then as you start educating them, then they're going to start to trust you. Right. And so we try to preach that to our clients as much as we can. It's hard sometimes, but I mean, all those things are like speaking to them at the level where it's like, hey, dude, everybody wants to grow their business. Everybody wants to make more money. Everybody wants to make more money and work less. You know what I mean? Right. And so, and so it's like, these are some of the things that you can, specifically video, because it's so, one to the masses, right? You shoot one video and it gets out, and then all these, obviously you start creating like affinity, right? Like people start to, know you, right? You feel like you know that person, like all the YouTubers that we watch. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
we feel like we're such fanboys that we feel like we know them, but yet they have no idea who we are.
Right,
you know?
right, exactly. That's how it works, man.
And so I'm like, I tell the same thing to our clients. Like it's the exact like same thing. Like, you know, and guess what? Whenever they sell something, we just go buy it, right?
Yeah, Peter
like
McKinnon's
there is no sales process.
Yeah.
It's all marketing.
Yeah.
And so so I tell our clients, like at the end of the day, doing this type of content is gonna make your like sales easier because again, people they walk in, they already feel like they know you, they already know what you do. They're just like, yeah, like I'm already sold,
Right.
you know? And so,
Exactly.
you know,
it might be hard to change the mindset. I've talked to a couple last year when TikTok was first the thing.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, hey, you know, like, why don't you do, you know, TikTok for your business or something?
Yeah. A lot of orthos are huge on TikTok, man. It's surprising. Yeah.
Now they are, but I mean, a year ago, I think they didn't miss the train because it's still fresh, it's still new. But the mindset was still like, oh, why? Why would I do that?
Specifically for orthodontists, I mean, and for any medical professional that works with like a younger, you know, demographic, right? Like, it's where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. You need to, obviously, you need to get in front of the teenager and doing something, you know, crazy and be like, and then they're going to be like, Mom, I want to go to this.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's so funny sometimes because like I've seen like really old dudes do like really funny videos on TikTok. And I'm like, hey man, hey, more power to you. Right. But it's so, and it feels like there's like this disconnect there in me, you know?
No, it's funny. Yeah. Yeah. There is these dentists that do funny videos and it's like, you know, you see them, but then I was like, dude, I want that guy to be my dentist now, you know?
So a lot of the times what we'll do is that for like our social media ads, like our clients will do TikTok videos.
Nice.
And we'll just grab that video and we'll put it up as an ad.
Oh, okay.
Like as a creative. And, sometimes it has nothing to do with what we're advertising, but just the fact that like because all you're trying to do is get people's attention, right? Yeah. So it's like we got their attention, and then the doctor's being likable, right? And so I'm like, at the end of the day, that's all you're trying to do. You're trying to get people to like you, and that's one of the things I going back to like some cool business concepts, like for anybody that is an entrepreneur and in any type of business, you always want to. You know, if you can get your client to like you, you will always have the upper hand. And I was at a business conference and I had the person I was presenting actually talked about this. He's like, I'm all about experiences. Like if I can provide a great experience for my client, I know I can get them to like me. And it's really great when you get somebody to actually like you because it doesn't like, think about the people that you like in your life, right? Like if they mess up, which if you're doing business with somebody at some point or another, you will mess up. Like something will go wrong for the most part, right? Like it's only a matter of time type of thing, right? You can't control every situation. And so, but if they like you, well, then you're going to be more lenient, right? And so, so the question that we've kind of even asked ourselves in our business is like, how can we engineer that as much as possible? How can I engineer getting people to like me? And so like one of the things that we did, which is kind of funny, like, so every time we sign on a new client, I mean, it's just basic stuff. We ship them a box of chocolates.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, no, I mean, this was like an old school thing, you know what I mean? Back in the day, like it was like you know, and, but everybody stopped doing it now because everybody's so digital, right? Like, you know, you work with people from different parts of the country, but I mean, just like a little simple touch like that, like it makes a huge difference because nobody does it and it makes an impression and then they just get you to like you. And hey, we've messed up. And we've even had clients that we had to stop working with because we implemented a campaign. It was not successful, but then they still leave us a 5-star review. And it's like, what? You know what I mean? Like, how does that happen? Well, because, you know.
You're likable.
Yeah.
No, it's, you have the right mindset for sure. Because you're not selling marketing. You really are selling the experience with, and well, at least on my end for wedding photography and stuff, I'm not selling pictures. I've gotten out of that mindset where it's like, oh, I need to have the newest cameras and stuff. And Because at the end of the day, it's the experience. If the couple likes you, you're gonna be okay
for sure.
Your photos will be fine.
And the nice thing about shooting weddings is that, like, you know, obviously if you do a good job, they like you. Well, then they have the rest. I mean, I don't know if you like, and I know a lot of photographers just specialize weddings and that's it, right? But like the benefit of one of the things as a business that you can always try, that you should consider doing, is like, how can I increase the lifetime customer value, which referred to as LTV. So for example, it's like, okay, well, this person just paid you $5,000 for your wedding package. But now it's like, okay, well, you're in this rat race, right? So it's like, so like I have to now find my next client, and my next client, because we refer to it as like a leaky bucket, right? Like you're filling the bucket, but then it's got all these holes in it. And so you have to keep filling it up every single month so that you can pay your mortgage, buy new equipment so you can feed yourself, like all that stuff. And trust me, like I've been in that business, and it is the most stressful type of business that you can have. And so one of the things that you can do, two things, like one is that you can look at increasing LTV, which is like, okay, well, I already made this connection. It's always harder to get, it's always more costly and harder to get new people, right? But if you can still keep that same person and ultimately say, hey man, well, you just got married, so you do the engagement, you do the wedding, well then guess what? A year from now or whenever, they're gonna have a kid. So you do you can do that shoot, then, and they're gonna still keep having like a bunch of other stuff, like a bunch of life experiences. And so that's something that potentially, you can capitalize on. There's nothing wrong also with like niching down, because a lot of people are just like, no, I just do weddings and that's it. Like, that's what I do. And hey man, like that's awesome. Right. But obviously, so one of the things is increasing LTV. And the other thing you can potentially look in doing is like how can I create reoccurring revenue? Right. And go ahead.
No, well, so some of the things I've seen is actually creating marketing for the small businesses, like as a subscription based service.
Yeah.
Whatever, $400 or $500 a month. You go once every 2 weeks or something to shoot for, make 10, 15 photos for Instagram or something.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, man, like, so like I said, like we used to have that type of business where we had to get business every single month. And then the nice thing about when we started Everable and Engage was that it was a reoccurring business.
Wow. Yeah. That makes
sense.
So
it changed everything for us. And then also the really nice thing about the way that we do advertising and marketing is that it's like, I've done pretty much everything when it comes to business. Like I've done development, I've done design, I've done film photography, I've done accounting, sales, and then like cold calling, pounding the streets and knocking on doors in the hot sun, trying to get people to give me their money. And it is not fun, right? Like it is not fun. So it's like when we were able to, it's like outbound and inbound marketing, right? It's like when we were able to figure out a way to help, to like get people coming to us versus us going to them, it changed the game for us. Wow. Right. And so that's where like we really started to have like good growth. And so, going back to like what I was saying, like, you can always look at bringing on more clients, and you can look at advertising, marketing yourself, right? There's actually more proactive approaches that, if you're a photographer or videographer or like a creative, I should just say a creative, that you could ultimately take, right? It does involve obviously us having a sales process.
Right.
But that's something that can be explored, right? But then in addition to that, like the subscription model is definitely, like what you were talking about, is the way to go. Like, I mean, especially if you want to stop worrying like where your next client's going to come from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like cause I mean, yeah, like, and that's how you have your business right now, right?
Yeah.
It's stressful, right?
It could be stressful. It's stressful to the point where it's like, the months that are skinny, right? Like, like this month I only get one wedding, and like, okay, so I got to figure a way out to make more income for this month.
And this is what we teach our clients too, because as dentists or orthos, like they have to get clients every single month, and we tell them, like, we teach them how to implement like reoccurring revenue. So it's like, dude, if you can just have even if it's just a little bit, like small, let's say a few hundred or a few $1,000s reoccurring revenue that can at least just cover your overhead, you know, you cover your mortgage, you cover like your monthly expenses, right? Whatever that is. Everything else you sell, every other wedding is just profit at that point. You know what I mean? And so it takes the weight off your shoulders of like, oh my God, like, you know, December's coming. It's a slow month. Like, where am I going to get, you know, how am I going to pay for rent, or how am I going to buy gifts for my family? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah, dude. It's I know the struggle's real. But like you were saying, subscription businesses is definitely the way to go. And so working with business people is a really great opportunity, because I mean, you could sell them like a package where it's like, hey, let's implement these type of videos, and every month, like, and honestly, like one of the things too, like really learning how to price yourself is a big one, because like, obviously, you know, if you charge somebody $500 versus $1,000, well, that's 100% difference.
Yeah.
Right. And so for one project, for the same amount of time. Right. And so that was one of the things too, is like, the only way that you can price it higher is by, one, delivering value, but also by actually being able to talk about it.
I got you. Right.
Because like at the end of the day, it's like, well, what is this video going to do for you? So for example, right, like when we were working together, and the pricing, right? It's like, I mean, you know, I'm all about paying people what they're worth because I've been there, right? And but even at that, it's like a way you could have sold that to me was like, well, what is this video going to do for you? Right?
You're right.
Like, and then that puts them in a mindset of like, yeah, like this video is going to help me build a better brand, which will ultimately, might not maybe help me get results tomorrow, like clients tomorrow, but in the long term, it will, right? And therefore, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for it.
Right.
And so that's when you're talking to a business owner. When you're talking to these families, it's exactly what you said. You're selling an experience, right? Like an experience that they don't want to forget. And so, you know, it's the same idea. Like, it's like Apple, I think, always does a really good job of this, because it's like they obviously don't sell the best equipment a lot of the time, or the best specs or whatever. But like, I remember when FaceTime first came out, like, I don't know if you recall, but like one of their ads was like a mom and then a child, and then the husband was away for work, and it was like the kid's birthday or something like that, and then they were there on FaceTime, and that was the ad where like the dad was like there virtually, right? And I'm like, dude, like it's all about that experience and what that feature, which is not a new feature. I mean, like Samsung probably had it.
Yeah. But the marketing team of Apple is just crazy, you know?
Yeah.
If Android just got a better, they just swap marketing teams, we would all be having Androids, I think, at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And
it's so crazy. They really go also on like the FOMO too. They really like, they capitalize on that. Like, because they have their status symbol, like having an Apple is like, oh, you know, the AirPods and stuff is very like, you know, they know what they're doing, obviously.
For sure. Yeah.
No, like,
and one of the things that I actually talking about Apple that I just remember was that like they actually recently, I don't know, this was already a few years ago, where I don't know if this is still the same person or not, but the CMO was they got a CMO from like Blueberry, or what's that company's name? Like that fashion brand? Blueberry.
Burberry. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that's the fruit. I'm not too into luxury brands, as you can tell. But they actually got the CMO of that company. I won't try to say the name. And of that, and it's like, what is a tech company doing hiring a CMO from a fashion company? Right. At the end of the day, Apple has become a fashion company. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like
it is. It's a status
that's how they've always kind of
even their new Max things. They're trying to get. They're giving it to all the athletes and all the things, because when we see the movie stars and athletes wearing those, I was like, oh man, we got to get one now too. Because
for sure,
it's the thing, man. I had a question. When you were talking, I was going to ask. I'm drawing blanks though now. I had a couple questions to ask you during that time.
Sorry, I talk a lot.
So what is like then during this process? So you've been doing this like 10 years now, like the
a little over. I mean, we've done different things, but the marketing specifically about 5 years now.
Wow. Okay. What was the biggest struggle during that time that you found to grow it?
So I think, I mean, there was a few things, right? Like I think when we first started, we were very focused on building our brand, and we weren't really focused on sales. And so, again, I come from a creative background. And so the creative background is that like you want to be in control of everything, right? And you want to deliver a certain quality every single time, which as you start to grow becomes a little bit more difficult. You know what I mean? And so specifically, I would say getting out of my own way.
Gotcha.
It depends what type of business you want to have, right? If you want to be a contractor freelancer for like ever, then by all means, more power to you, right? But I knew that like I wanted a type of business where I wanted freedom, and I wanted to ultimately be able to do the things that I really enjoy doing. Now, I really love helping people grow their business, but like I also really enjoy photography and film and stuff. Like even last night, I was telling my wife that sometimes I get these urges that I'm just like, I want to quit everything and just want to go do like video stuff. Like it's not a wise decision, you know what I mean? Because that's not where I make my money, right? But like I sometimes get these urges, right? But I knew that I wanted, so a business, doesn't matter what it is, should always be a means to an end, right? Like you can't just go into your business because like, yeah, I'm going to live, breathe, and do this every single day. And I know you said this in your videos where it's like, at the end of the day, you can either be editing or be spending time with your family, right? And like, we all got in business for ourselves to do the things that, you know, so that like we wouldn't be tied to a job,
right? And
like we could spend more time with our family. We can spend more time with the people we want to spend more time with, right? And we want and do the things that we enjoy doing, right? And not having to be, you know, not having to worry about money. But you know, obviously, it's not as glamorous as it, at least not in the beginning, as it can be. And so, if you there's only two. I personally think that there's only two ways to do it. If you're a freelancer, you need to get to the point where you're charging so much money per project that you can still have that time flexibility. You know, where you can still make enough money to have a nice living. You know what, and everybody has their own measure of what that means to them, right? Like, hey, it's making 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand a month or whatever. Or is it like, hey, now hey man, I'm in the valley. It's not that expensive here. 3 grand, 5 grand a month. Like I'm perfectly fine. I just do one wedding, you know, a month and I'm good. Right. Yeah. But everybody's different. Right. Yeah. And so, you know, so it just depends on what you want to do. So if you want to stay like an independent contractor freelancer, like you got to figure out what you want and then kind of create your plan accordingly so that you can charge what you're worth and then still have that time flexibility that you want.
Gotcha.
Whereas like, for me, it's like, it kind of got to the point where I was like, let's just see what happens. Like, can I actually do this? Like, can I actually grow this kind of business? And can I have multiple employees and all this stuff? And it was kind of like a little challenge. And so for a very long time, we had been kind of stuck at a specific revenue mark. And then when 2020 happened, I actually ended up getting like a mentor, and he really helped me like realize that I was just getting in my own way, you know? So like one of the biggest things was like sales. Like you have to, at the time I would do all the sales in my business.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want to personally let that go because I thought that nobody else could do it, or that everybody else would still kind of deliver our service or speak about our service in a way that I didn't think that like would be beneficial for us, right? And I just wanted to be like hands-on. And so I one time did try to scale our business, but I'm naturally an introvert. And so like I remember one week I did like 20 calls, like sales calls. And at the end of the week, I was just like curled up in my bed, like depressed, you know what I mean? Like all sad, you know?
It is depressing when you do that because you get told no a lot. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so I'm like, so then I was literally telling this guy the story, and he's like, So you're telling me, so it's telling me that you're telling me that you're the problem, that, you know, you're not scaling because like you can't, like, you know what I mean? You're the one, you're holding yourself back essentially.
Right.
And I'm just like, dude, yeah, I guess that's true. And it's such a like, you know what I mean? Like, duh, you know what I mean? Like, why I knew that. But then it kind of just really helped me. Like a lot of time it's ego and it's pride, because it's like, of course there's people that can do it better than you. Like there's always somebody that can do it better than you. And so we ended up then at that point hiring salespeople, and then we really cramped up our advertising. And then that's when we really started having like a lot more growth. And so for definite. So like, again, going back to bringing it back home to like creative stuff where it might be more relevant to maybe some of the people listening, right? It's like, you can either be a freelancer and raise your prices so that you can charge a life that you're and live a life that you're comfortable with. Or you can look at like, okay, how can I really grow a business? How can I become a CEO? Because you like a lot of freelancers think they have a business. No, you don't have a business. All you do, or all you have is that you own your job, but it's still a job.
Right.
You just own, you know what I mean? Like you own it, you know what I mean? It's not up until you can actually like make money without you being tied to that business where you actually really have a real business. Right.
Wow.
And so it's like, okay, then if you do want to then make more money and scale a little bit more, it's like, okay, how can I be comfortable with maybe not necessarily me doing everything, but start actually seeing myself as a CEO or as an entrepreneur, business person, and actually start hiring people to do these things that are like these tasks that are revenue producing. Right. And so, you know, and I know there's a few photographers in our area that have done quite well in doing that. And they've come from like, they would kind of do everything themselves. And now they've kind of have photographers under them to do it, different things like that. There is no right or wrong way of doing it. It's just what you want to do. What you want to do. Right. And so you just gotta like, you gotta know that I sound like Gary Vee, right? So you gotta be self-aware, man. You know what I mean? Like you gotta know what you want and all that stuff. But,
wow.
But I mean, it's true. You know?
Well, so what were the steps then what were the most important things? And because you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I guess was to take it from 6 to 7 figures then, because I hear a lot of people talking about that. Like there's the 10X, right? Like there's a huge steps that you need to do in order to be able to.
Well, honestly, it's not as difficult as a lot of people make it sound. Like the most difficult thing is getting from like 0 to 100,000. Like, and I feel like that's like the first stage of any business. And I mean 100,000 within a year. Like, you know what I mean? Like not within a month or anything. You know what I mean? Like within 1 year you revenued or, you know, you grossed $100,000, right? And so that's kind of stage one. That's like, you're a 1-person show, maybe a 2-person show, or you have an assistant or something like that, but you're still the one doing everything. That's usually the hardest thing to kind of get over, because you have to really learn how to delegate. And that can be very difficult sometimes, right? Once you kind of get to a place where you learn how to delegate and you have a solid product that people want, right? So like you have product, what's called like market product fit, right? You have a product, your market really loves it, and it has appeal, and people buy it, right? And so once you've kind of established that, then the other aspect to it is like from getting from 6, which is 100,000, to like 7, it's just doing that, but on steroids, right? Because like a lot of people want to, like I feel like a lot of times people just overcomplicate it because they try to like stack too many things on top of it. So what I mean is that like, how can I give you a good example? So like in my type of business, it's like, okay, I can, we call it patient acquisition. We have a service that's called patient acquisition, and that service is a very duplicatable service. Okay. Meaning that it doesn't cost me a lot of time nor effort because it's so duplicatable and so automated that a lot of the times I can just push a button and I can have I can cut hours of work. And so therefore I can still charge a really good amount for it because it has a lot of value, but yet personally me, it's not costing me that much time to do it. And so once you have that in place, right? A lot of people sometimes, if they want to get from like 6 to 7, it's like, well, okay, I do patient acquisition really well. Maybe another way that I can make money is if I start doing more photography, or I start offering a videography, or I start offering web design or social media marketing, or like you start stacking other services on top.
I see.
But the truth is that all you're doing is creating more work for yourself. And a lot of the times it's not really worth it because all those new services have a very distinct process and have more, you're adding more complication to what you already do really, really well. And so instead of doing that, it's doing the same thing, but just doing more of it. Okay. So instead of me doing web design now to actually bring more money in, well, no, I'm just going to stick with what I do really, really well. And I'm just going to like put it on steroids basically, right? Just got it. So really all we did in our business was that we just tried to we just literally started spending more money on advertising and we hired salespeople and we started getting those salespeople selling our product. Right. Wow. And so Everable took us about 3 years to get it to a place where it was like good revenue producing.
Gotcha.
But Engage, like the new business that we had, we went from 1 client to 70 clients in 3 months.
Wow.
So like literally we got to a 7-figure run rate in 3 months.
Wow.
Right. And so, cause the cool thing too is like, once you learn how to do something like build a business, like that's why sometimes business owners will go bankrupt, but then they'll like be rich again, like a year later, because they already learned the skills necessary. Right. You know what I mean? And so like once you learn the skills, like I'm not saying that it's easy, but like you have I guess the skills necessary, I guess I don't know any other way of saying it, to actually build up again. And so I think for us, that's why like we knew what worked. We knew the formula, we knew the steps to take, and we just did it, but we just tried to do it really, really fast. And so the key thing was just sales. Now, growing fast sounds nice, but then there's obviously all the operational
That's true. You need the people to do it too. Yeah.
So like, honestly, even in your business, like you could generate a ton more sales right now and you'd make a ton more money within, you know what I mean? Within a short time period. But then it's like, okay, well now I need to deal with all these clients. Right. And so that's what I mean, that like the other side of it is that, and where I've had to kind of do simultaneously, it's like, okay, be okay with ramping things up, but then also removing myself from that process so that I can actually reach the goals that I wanted to reach. Wow. So like that's just kind of in your scenario, it's like, okay, well then I would say, well, yeah, I'm going to get a ton of sales and then I'm just going to hire a bunch of photographers. Right. And, to fulfill on that work, to do fulfillment. And so it really just depends on like, again, if you actually like, because one of the things you also need to evaluate is like, what do I want to do? Like, I know maybe I'm a great photographer, but I'm not a great salesperson. Well, then find a salesperson, right? Yeah. Or like, I'm not a great manager. Well, then get a manager, right? Partner with the manager, right? And I mean, like business, like there's people that want to get into business and, do their thing. So it's like, sometimes partnering with somebody is a whole nother thing. I've had in one of my previous business, we were 5 partners. I do not recommend it. Oh, wow. But I mean, there's baby steps that you can take. Cause I mean, even in photography right now, like you could hire a photographer for like relatively not that much money and you could just pay. And especially if they're like learning still, but they have potential, you know what I mean? Like, and then obviously you train them and then you get them to a place where they're good. And then now you don't even have to be there anymore. That person's doing that work, but then you grew together, which was the nice thing, right? Because it wasn't so much money for you up front where you couldn't afford that person, but you grew together and then now you can actually pay them what they're worth. Right. So I don't know, that was the most difficult thing. And that's how we did it. We just ramped up sales and we just hired people.
Sounds simple, but
it's, you know, and part of it is that like, you have to be okay with the fact that things will go wrong. You know what I mean? Like there's a ton of things that went wrong. Right. But like there is no right or wrong way. And you learn from those things. I'd rather have money and have security and knowing that I can support my family than like not, you know what I mean? So like, I'm okay with ramping it up and like, and then I've always been like that. I've always been like, I'll figure things out in the back because I trust myself. Like I know I can figure things out. Like, but you know, it's like
the pain for you is the pain point was like not being able to provide. Yeah. So you were willing to undergo all that other.
Yeah. To give you a little story, right? So like I left that other business before starting Everbowl with like a negative bank account. Like I didn't have any money. My wife would support me at the time. Technically, like I lived with my wife. We weren't married yet. I ended up moving in with her because I didn't have a place to stay. She was the one that was working. I didn't have any money. And it was a really tough time. And we were about to get married. And I just so happened to get like 1 or 2 clients. And so I was making some money. But then like a really good opportunity came where I could invest into something to learn how to do like this one thing in my business in particular. But it was like way too much money. I couldn't afford it. And so I took a chance, and thankfully my dad, and I had horrible credit. And my dad, since he had connections at a bank, he was actually able to help me like get a loan. Okay. And he actually signed for it too. So he was nice enough to do that. But this program, I think it was like a $10,000 program. And the bank only lent me like $3,000. But the nice thing was that this program, I could pay it in 3 months. So like I would only have to pay like $3,000 and then $3,000. So I'm like, I had to, you know, come up with that money 60 days down the line. You know what I mean? Like, and I remember being on the phone on our wedding day with the dude from that program, and I signed up. But like, you know, it was like a really difficult time. And like, but I mean, like,
oh man,
sometimes you just got to take the risk, dude. Like, you know, and you got to like push forward and then just figure things out in the back end. Like I've heard a lot of people say that like at the end of the day, like people really perform when they're forced to, right? Like if you look at like back when was it, when the housing market crashed, like 2008, like if you notice, a lot of businesses started rising within that time. Like a lot of entrepreneurs, like and business people, like a lot of people started their own business during that time because they were forced to, right? And that's the nice thing. Like necessity breeds like innovation, right? And so, you know, I would say like as like one of the things that you can do if you really want to push yourself forward is like put yourself in a situation that it's like, right. You know what I mean? Like, it's a fight or flight. You know what I mean? Yeah. and you'll surprise yourselves, which is actually pretty nice. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. It's like, not nice during the time where you're freaking out.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I got 60
but you need that sometimes, right? Like, like, you know, I say this all the time. It's like, you know, you don't change when you're happy. And so like you need difficulty, you need challenges in your life to just become a better person, period. You know, and that's in like every aspect of your life. Right. And so same thing applies to business. Like, I mean, if you're comfortable, well, a lot of times you're not really trying to innovate, you know what I mean? Or do something different because you're comfortable, you're having fun. Right. But like when you put yourself against the wall and you really need a fight, right. That's when like, creativity just comes to you, right? Like, you know, you start figuring things out and you're like, man, like, yeah, and you make it happen. You provided, you know, the money or whatever. Right. And so, yeah, that's fun.
Well, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah. I say, to kind of finish things off, right? Like, and I mean, I'm sure you'll agree, right? I say this all the time when it comes to business. It's like, look, business is not easy, but at least it's not boring.
Yeah.
And if there's any, like, if I could ask anything for, like, in life, I would just ask for, like, a life that's not boring. You know what I mean? Like, you know, obviously life will, I have this shirt my sister gave to me. It's like a really Colorado shirt because it's from Colorado, but then it says life isn't easy. Life is good. And I'm like, dude, that's so spot on, man. Cause it's like, hey man, like, all I want a life that's good. It's not easy. It's good and it's never boring. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So,
you know, I don't know where to interject anything. I'm just like, I'm listening.
well, I'm just
listening.
I'm sure you agree, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, business, I mean, you know,
exactly.
I mean, obviously I'm sure nursing has its challenges and that's not boring either, right? Cause obviously it's like super high pace and all these crazy challenges come at you, right? But like, obviously being an entrepreneur, it's like a different kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And being in business for yourself. And
yeah, it's a different mindset for sure. You have to get out of. I think I've had it since a small, but just never, just always comfortable just working, getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. You're used to that. That's fine but I just, it wasn't for me ever.
Yeah.
But
I actually want to, we'll leave this for another time, but I actually want to talk to you a little bit. I would love to hear more about like your story and like kind of like what kind of got you to like wanting to start your own business and all that stuff.
Yeah, at some point, I guess. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I think it's always been in the family. So it's my mom was, you know, a restaurant owner.
Nice.
Yeah, it was, and it's hard, man, and it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I grew up like the same thing. My parents were both entrepreneurs, and like I grew up with it, and now I've lived it myself, and I've seen when my dad just like.
Wow,
just
man.
didn't have any money, you know what I mean? Like, and so we had, or when he had a lot of money, it was always just like a roller coaster.
You just never know.
Yeah.
I guess, real quick, did you ever read, how many books like do you read?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Okay.
I've never been too much into reading. I've read some books for sure, obviously. Right. But like, it was always about just reading the books that I felt that were necessary for me to read at the time to solve a specific problem, if that makes sense.
Cool.
And so what really helped sparked my career in it's called the direct response world. A lot of people might know it. It's super huge. ClickFunnels, Russell Brunson, like definitely it was one of the people to listen to that will, you know, get you exposed to that type of industry and then just go from there. Right. And then once you kind of get into that, then you just start going deep into it. Most recently, one of the guys I listen to a lot is Alex Hormozi, shout out. He actually just came out with a book that's actually been really, really good and has helped us a lot. And
nice, man. Nice.
Yeah, dude. But no book in particular, just, I mean, those, and that'll kind of open the world to direct response marketing, which is a whole new beast. And you can,
I'm sure there's more that we just barely scratched the surface, it seems. Yeah. Wow. And my mind's already blown. Well, I mean, Luis, I appreciate you inviting me to your home and, you know, giving me some insight on, everybody, thanks for listening, and
thank you guys. Hopefully that was insightful a little bit. I never know.
I know your mind's blown just like mine right now. I'm just like, wow, I just feel like I'm back in school again. That's crazy. Alrighty, guys, we'll see you later.
See ya.
Jeez, dude.
Was that actually good?
That was pretty good, man.
Yeah.